shocking losses, but from brutal knockouts to emotional victories, his story ages. His name alone strikes fear into the hearts of opponents. That man, without a doubt, is Chuck, the Iceman Liddell. But what happened to Chuck Liddell? Where did he rise, and where did he fall? Stay tuned as we go deep into the achievements, losses, and fascinating career stats of one of the most feared men in UFC history. Trust me, you won't want to miss a second of this breakdown. Chuck Liddell wasn't just any fighter, he was the fighter that put the UFC on the map in the early 2000s. Standing 6'2", weighing 205 lbs, with a reach of 76 inches, Liddell brought power and precision every time he stepped into the octagon. With an orthodox stance, his striking was his signature weapon. Liddell wasn't known for his submissions, but when it came to landing punches, oh boy, did he deliver. His early career was marked by a series of impressive wins, where he quickly gained a reputation for his knockouts. The guy had a striking accuracy of 35%, and while that might not sound like a lot, it was more than enough to send his opponents crashing to the mat. He landed nearly 3 strikes per minute, 2.97. Just think about that. Almost 3 powerful, calculated punches landing every minute. But Liddell wasn't just about offense. He was smart in his defense too. He had a striking defense rate of 56%, meaning more than half of his opponent's strikes never even touched him. That's not just power, that's skill. Blow for blow. Liddell's rise to the top wasn't a walk in the park. He had to fight through some of the toughest names in the UFC. From Tito Ortiz to Randy Couture, Liddell faced and defeated many of the best fighters of his era. His rivalry with Ortiz? That's the stuff of legends. Their fights were more than just battles, they were wars, and fans couldn't get enough. When Liddell finally claimed the UFC Light Heavyweight Championship in 2005 by defeating Couture, it was a defining moment not only for him, but for the entire sport. Liddell didn't just win the belt, he dominated. His Tico win over Couture in their second fight was a perfect example of his raw power and precision. This wasn't just about winning titles. It was about making a statement. At the height of his career, Chuck had a takedown accuracy of 75%. That's right, while he was known for his striking. If he wanted to, Liddell could bring you down to the mat with frightening efficiency. And good luck trying to take him down. His takedown defense was a staggering 81%, meaning 8 out of 10 times his opponents couldn't even bring him to the ground. But as we know, no champion stays on top forever. And Chuck Liddell was about to face the beginning of the end. As dominant as Chuck was during his prime, the sport of MMA is unforgiving. Once fighters figure you out, the tides can turn quickly. Between 2007 and 2010, Chuck Liddell's career took a drastic turn. After a dominant reign, he suffered a series of brutal knockout losses that shook fans to their core. One of the most memorable losses came against Rashad Evans in 2008. Do you remember that knockout? It's one of the most devastating in UFC history. 1 second, Chuck was in the fight, and the next second bomb, he was flat on the canvas. It wasn't just a loss, it was a statement. Suddenly, the aura of invincibility around the Iceman began to fade. What made these losses even more shocking was that Chuck still could land powerful strikes. But as the UFC evolved, so did his competition. Fighters were younger, faster, and more well-rounded, and Chuck was starting to show signs of slowing down. Besides his striking accuracy and takedown defense, the losses kept piling up, and each knockout. Seriously though, if you're Chuck, do you think you'd consider wearing a helmet after the third knockout? Chuck Liddell's official UFC record stands at 21 wins and 8 losses. But if you think numbers alone define his career, you're mistaken. His influence on the sport is immeasurable. He brought excitement to the UFC that drew in fans who had never even heard of mixed martial arts before. Liddell wasn't just a fighter, he was a star. Looking at his career stats, you see a fighter who could both give and take punishment. He absorbed 2.71 SAPM, which means he wasn't afraid to trade blows. But with a striking defense of 56%, he dodged more than half of what was thrown at him. In terms of grappling, Liddell wasn't known for his submissions. He had a submission average of 0.0, but that wasn't his style. An 81% takedown defense? That's almost unheard of. Liddell's legacy isn't just in his wins and losses. It's in the way he fought. He brought a fearless, knockout-driven style that helped make the UFC what it is today. But even as Chuck's fighting days started winding down, his impact on the sport was far from over. After his retirement in 2010, Chuck Liddell didn't just disappear. He remained heavily involved in the world of MMA, both as a mentor and an ambassador for the sport. He helped pave the way for the new generation of fighters and served as an example of what it means to be a warrior inside and outside of the octagon. And even though his last official fight was in 2018, when he came out of retirement to face his old rival Tito Ortiz, his influence on the UFC and MMA is still felt today. Fighters like Conor McGregor, John Jones, and many others owe part of their stardom to the path that Chuck Liddell helped blaze. But let's not forget his rematch with Ortiz didn't go as planned. Chuck was knocked out in the first round, bringing his rivalry with Ortiz to a close. While it wasn't the fairy tale ending fans had hoped for, it didn't tarnish Liddell's legacy. The sport of MMA has evolved, and Liddell was one of the pioneers who helped it grow into the global phenomenon it is today. But the question is, will we ever see another fighter like Chuck Liddell? A fighter who was as exciting outside the cage as he was inside it? If there was a UFC Hall of Fame for hairstyles, do you think Chuck Liddell's mohawk would make it in? Now, here's a question for you. Who do you think was Chuck Liddell's toughest opponent? Was it Randy Couture, Tito Ortiz, or someone else? And more importantly, do you think Chuck Liddell's legacy would have been the same if he hadn't experienced those tough losses at the end of his career? I want to hear your thoughts, so drop your answers in the comments below. Before you go, make sure you hit that subscribe button if you enjoyed this video of the Iceman. We've got more legendary UFC stories coming your way, and you won't want to miss them. And hey, one last thing. What UFC fighter should we cover next? Let us know in the comments, and maybe your suggestion will be in our next video. Thanks for watching.